Round 4 of the Champions League for Group F, for the Group of Death, has just ended. And wow, what a group. We have just seen Newcastle lose again to Dortmund 2-0. And the shock defeat, the upset of the night, was Milan winning 2-1 against PSG. What this means is that currently, after 4 games, Dortmund is at top with 7, PSG second with 6, Milan fifth, Milan with the 5 points, and Newcastle bottom with 4 points. So let's try to see who can win in this group and who can qualify for the knockout stages. I'm going to decide based on 3 factors: fixtures upcoming, their injury list, and the current form. I'm going to give the least priority to form, and I'm going to give bigger priority to fixture list and injuries. So let's start with the team I think is going to struggle the most to qualify, and that's Newcastle. Newcastle currently sit at just 4 points. They're bottom of the group. The problem with Newcastle is that they had the group in their hands when they won against PSG. They had 4 points after just 2 games. And if they got any sort of result against Dortmund, they could have had an easier time to qualify. The problem with Newcastle now is they need to win their next 2 games to qualify. There is no other choice. They have to win both of the next 2 games. So let's look at the fixture list for Newcastle. As you can see on the screen, the fixture list is really tough. The easiest match for Newcastle is the upcoming one, which is Bournemouth away, which they can win, even with an injured squad. Then comes the 2 week international break. I think this break is what Newcastle needed the most, which will help them tremendously with their injury crisis. So let's see the following matches after the international break. It is Chelsea at home, which is difficult. They can win it, but you never know what is going to happen with Chelsea. Then their toughest match, which is PSG away. Then United at home, Everton away, Tottenham away, and then finally Milan at home. So if you look at this fixture list, except Bournemouth, they don't have any easy match. At most, they are moderate difficulty, but most of them are difficult matches. So they have a very difficult fixture list. Now let's check out their injury. Harvey Barnes, long-term injury. Botman, Isak are the two who are short-term injuries and might return after the international break. But except that, Harvey Barnes is long-term, Jacob Murphy long-term, Elliot Anderson long-term, Target long-term, Dan Burn long-term. And the biggest problem is Callum Wilson, who has just pulled up his hamstring in this current match of the Dortmund one, which has just finished. And even he might have a long-term injury again. So international break will help them with 2 returning players, maybe with Botman and Isak. But on a larger scale, they have a lot of injuries, both in defense and attack. If you look at their form, the problem with form is before the Champions League match, Newcastle had only lost 1 match in the Premier League since September, which was against Brighton. And since early September, they hadn't lost a game in the Premier League and the Carabao. But the problem with Champions League is as soon as they came against Dortmund, they lost twice in a row. So form doesn't really matter in the Champions League. It's the added pressure of performing at the European stage and a midweek game, which makes it really difficult, and form doesn't really matter. So that's why I think Newcastle is going to have the toughest time, because they have a very difficult fixture list. They have a lot of injuries. And the biggest thing is they're bottom of the group with only 4 points. Next, let's talk about the team who has just made the upset, AC Milan. If you look at AC Milan's fixture list, they have a relatively easier fixture list if you compare it to Newcastle or even Dortmund. As you can see, their only tough matches, really tough matches, would be the Champions League matches, as well as Atlanta and Fiorentina. But the advantage for Milan is they have a bigger gap between the matches. If you look at the Frosinone and the Atlanta match, they have a 6 day break, which is enough for recovery. Newcastle doesn't have that recovery time. So fixture list is definitely in the favor of Milan. If you look at the injury list for AC Milan, that's where they might be a bit concerned because they have some big players missing. Benasser, Kalulu, and Simon would be the three which I would think are the big misses for their squad depth. But as you saw in the PSG match, it might not even matter and they might still get the results. So here's the thing with Milan. Milan winning against PSG has helped Newcastle's chances of qualifying from the Champions League group, but at the same time, it has reduced their chances of qualifying for Europa. So there's a very big chance that Newcastle might not even get Europa and might get totally knocked out. Let's talk about Dortmund. If you look at Dortmund, they probably have the toughest fixture list. They even have a tougher fixture list than Newcastle. They have a match on Saturday against Stuttgart, who are third in the league. Then Gladbach, who are 11th, which they should be able to handle. Then Milan, then Leverkusen away, who are first in the league. Then Stuttgart again, then Leipzig, who are fourth in the league, and then PSG. So the problem with Dortmund is that they have the toughest fixture list, but their form again has been decent, has been actually been pretty good. But like I said, form doesn't really matter in Europe. They also don't have that many injury concerns. So the only problem for Dortmund is that they have a very, very tight fixture list and very difficult fixture list. But the advantage for Dortmund is they are top of the group with 7 points. Those 7 points are going to be a really good safety net to help them qualify for the group. Because even if they don't qualify for the group, there's a very good chance that they can at least go into Europa. I would say that Dortmund have the best chance of qualifying from this group. Let's talk about PSG. The thing is, PSG has choked this group. They have played 2 games away in the Champions League. Against Newcastle, they lost. Against Milan, they lost. And then the third match against Dortmund away, which is again going to be very difficult, as in last match day. So if you look at PSG's fixture list, as you can see, League One is more or less their league. I don't think there's a point in looking at the Uber Eats fixture list. The main thing is the PSG Newcastle. Newcastle have to play away to PSG, and the only strength PSG have in this season of Champions League is their home form. And Newcastle playing away from home is probably going to mean PSG win. And if PSG wins this match, Newcastle is more or less out of Europe completely. PSG doesn't have much of an injury concern, and the form has been relatively good as well. So now the question comes, what are my predictions for this Champions League group F? I'm going to say at fourth place, Newcastle. They have a very difficult fixture list, a lot of injuries. They have to play PSG away and Milan at home. Both are really difficult matches, especially PSG away. So I'm going to say Newcastle fourth. At third place, I'm going to say AC Milan. The reason I'm going to say them at third place is because they have a less stressful fixture list, and even though Milan's form had been really bad before this PSG match, but suddenly they won against PSG. So form doesn't really matter. So I'm going to say that due to less injuries, easier fixture list, and favorable matches, because they have Milan, because Milan has Dortmund at home. So they might get some result in that. So I'm going to say Milan or Newcastle as third or fourth, with Milan probably going into as third. Then I'm going to say that at second place is going to be Dortmund. because even though they have a really bad fixture list, be having 7 points at this point is probably gonna ensure that they might go through. And at first place, I'm gonna say PSG. I'm only saying PSG because I believe that they can get result in both of the matches. They can get a result at home against Newcastle and at Dortmund. They can at least get a draw there. The craziest thing about this group is that anyone can top the group, anyone can be eliminated. That's how open and fun this group is. This group is gonna go till the last match day. My predictions, as I've said before, PSG first, Dortmund second. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna say Newcastle third, Milan fourth. It will go till the last match day. So let's see what happens. Can the oil money clubs PSG and Newcastle qualify, or will they lose to the football heritage of Milan and Dortmund? It's gonna be really exciting, and it's probably gonna determine if Kylian Mbappe is gonna stay at this club or if he's finally gonna move after all of this drama for the last few years to Madrid or somewhere else. So yeah, that's it for my video. It's gonna be really fun. I'm really looking forward to it. If you like my content, please check out my previous videos. I have a playlist for this season's matches, as well as my last video, which talked about Manchester United scraping a win. If you also like my content, please give me a like and click on the subscribe button. I'll see you all in my next video. Goodbye.